The small exploration ship fell from the sky like a wounded bird. Teo gripped the controls as fire erupted around him, the sound of metal tearing apart filling his ears. The planet below was green and wild, covered in thick jungle and strange, twisted trees. He had maybe 30 seconds to find a landing spot before everything went wrong. The ship crashed hard into a clearing surrounded by towering plants with purple leaves. Teo flew forward, his head snapping back from the impact. Pain shot through his neck and shoulders. For a long moment he sat in silence, breathing heavily, listening to the groans and pops of cooling metal around him. He was alive. That was something. He ran a quick check on the ship's systems. Everything was damaged. The communication system was completely dead. The power core was leaking energy. The left engine had simply ceased to exist. Even the repair tools were buried under debris from the crash. Teo closed his eyes for a moment and thought about what to do next. There was a relay station about 40 kilometers to the east. That was the only way to call for help. He would have to walk there. He would have to walk through the jungle. Teo gathered his emergency pack and secured his tactical boots. These boots were special, made for rough ground and sharp things. They had thick soles and metal reinforcement around the ankles. He had used them on 7 different planets, and they had saved his feet from broken glass, hot rocks, and poisoned spikes. On Vex 9, he had a feeling they would save him from much worse. Before he left the ship, he called out on the emergency frequency. Maybe someone was listening. Maybe a satellite would pick up his signal. This is Explorer Teo reporting crash on planet Vex 9. Ship is damaged. I am heading to relay station. Please acknowledge if anyone receives this message. Only static answered him back. He stepped out of the ship into warm, humid air. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. The jungle was loud with sounds he had never heard before. Strange chirps and clicks came from the trees. Something large moved through the undergrowth far away. Teo adjusted his pack and began walking toward the east, toward the relay station and rescue. Above him, in the canopy of purple-leafed trees, 3 pairs of eyes watched him go. The creatures those eyes belonged to were magnificent and terrible at the same time. They had bodies like large hunting cats, but bigger, stronger, more intelligent. Their fur was dark silver with black stripes. They had teeth that could tear through bone and claws that could cut through steel. These were Velkari, the apex predators of Vex 9. The 3 watching were not adults. They were cubs, perhaps only 4 years old by Velkari standards. They were old enough to hunt small animals and old enough to understand danger, but they were still young enough to find almost everything fascinating. Their names, in the language of their kind, were Kira, Day, and Juan. Kira was the smallest of the 3, but she was also the quickest and the smartest. Her eyes were bright yellow, sharp, and intelligent. She watched the strange creature below with genuine curiosity. She had never seen anything like it before. It moved on 2 legs instead of 4. It had no fur, just exposed pink skin. It made soft clicking sounds with its mouth as it walked. But the strangest thing about this creature was what covered its feet. The feet of the creature were hidden inside hard, dark objects. Kira knew what feet looked like. Every animal she had ever seen had bare feet or paws. But this thing, this strange creature, had wrapped its feet in something artificial. The objects had white cord running through the top of them and hard soles underneath. Kira had never seen anything like this before, and it fascinated her completely. Day was larger than Kira, with a broader chest and stronger muscles. He was more cautious, more careful. He watched the creature with less excitement and more suspicion. Day was the kind of cub who thought before he acted. He could smell the creature now, and it smelled strange, like metal and something burning and something very alien. He was not sure if this was something dangerous or just something new. Juan was between the other 2 in size and personality. He was playful and curious like Kira, But he also had some of Day's caution. He wanted to get closer to the strange creature, but he also wanted to be careful. He moved a little closer to his siblings, ready to follow whichever one led the way. The three cubs followed the creature as it walked deeper into the jungle. They moved silently, as all predators could when they wanted to. They kept their distance, about 50 meters back, watching and learning. They saw how the creature was slow and clumsy compared to them. It moved carefully, stepping over roots and ducking under branches. It was clearly afraid of the jungle, and that made it seem less dangerous somehow. As the sun sank lower and the jungle grew darker, Teo found a good place to stop for the night. There was a sheltered ravine with a small stream running through it. The walls of rock would protect him from most angles. He built a small camp and opened his emergency rations. The food tasted like nothing much at all, but it gave him energy. Teo sat by his small campfire and cleaned his feet. The boots had protected his skin, but his feet ached from walking. He applied medical gel to a few blisters and wrapped them carefully. As he worked, he activated his personal communication device. "Me son, can you hear me?" he called into the device. Static for a moment, then a voice crackled through. It was his partner monitoring from orbit. "Teo, we detected your crash. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Teo said. "The ship is destroyed. I'm heading to the relay station on foot. It should take about 5 days if I push hard." "The relay station is offline," Mi-san said, her voice worried. "I can see it from here, but it's not responding to signal checks. And Teo, we're detecting large heat signatures around your position. Stay alert. There are definitely predators in that jungle." Teo looked around nervously but saw nothing in the darkness. "I'll be careful," he said. "I have the boots and my flare gun. I should be fine." They talked for a few more minutes before the signal got worse and then disappeared entirely. Teo was alone again, sitting in his little camp with only the sounds of the jungle around him. He pulled his boots off and placed them beside him as he lay down to sleep. The jungle was warm, and the sound of the stream was soothing. Within minutes, he was asleep. In the darkness, the three cubs crept closer to the camp. They were careful and quiet. They had been trained by their parents to hunt, and hunting meant stealth. They circled the sleeping creature, studying it from different angles. It was completely defenseless, lying there with its eyes closed, its breathing slow and even. But the cubs did not attack. Attacking prey while it was weak was not interesting to them right now. What was interesting was the strange object that the creature had removed from its feet. The dark, hard objects were sitting on the ground right next to the sleeping creature. They looked very strange indeed. Kira was the first to investigate. She approached slowly, carefully, as if the object might move and attack her at any moment. Her whiskers twitched as she smelled it. It smelled like the strange creature, mixed with something sharp and chemical. She reached out one paw and gently touched it. The object did not move. It did not seem alive. She picked up one boot in her mouth. It was heavier than she expected, and it tasted bad. She dropped it and made a disgusted face. Then her curiosity returned. The boot had an opening at the top. Kira could see inside it. She wondered what that opening was for. She bent down and tried to figure out how to interact with it. She attempted to put her paw into the opening from the side, but her leg was the wrong shape. Then she had an idea. What if the opening was meant for her foot to go in from the bottom, the way her own paw naturally wanted to move? Kira lined up her leg and pushed her paw downward, trying to force the whole foot through the boot like it was some kind of sleeve. The boot resisted. Her leg was too big and bent the wrong way. She pushed harder, confused and determined. Day watched this and moved closer to inspect the second boot. Juan did the same with the third boot. All three cubs were now fully engaged in trying to understand this strange human invention. None of them understood what shoes were meant to do. They only knew they were curious, and they were going to figure this mystery out. Kira pulled her leg out of the boot with a frustrated growl. Her paw would not fit the way she was trying to put it in. The boot was resisting her, and she did not like it. She threw it aside with her mouth and watched it roll across the ground. This strange object refused to cooperate with her. Day was having better luck, or at least he thought he was. He had managed to get his paw partially into the opening of the second boot. His thick leg bent in ways he did not usually bend it, and it felt uncomfortable. But he was making progress. He was almost through. He could feel the inside of the boot around his lower leg. Just a little bit more, and he would have it completely on. He pushed harder. That was when his leg got stuck. Day yanked backward, but the boot came with him. It had somehow wrapped around his leg in a way that would not release. He pulled again, harder this time, and felt pain as the boot twisted against his fur. He started to panic, thrashing his leg and making small, yowling sounds of frustration. The boot flew off, and he fell backward onto the ground. Juan had been watching both of his siblings struggle with the strange objects. He was being more thoughtful about the whole thing. He picked up the third boot and examined it carefully from all angles. He noticed that the opening at the top was wider than the bottom. That seemed important. Maybe the opening was where something was supposed to go in. But what? And why was it wider at the top? He tried something different. Instead of pushing his paw from the bottom or the side, he tried to put his entire foot upward through the opening from above. His paw was larger than the opening, so it did not work either. The boot was a complete mystery. All three cubs made frustrated sounds. They had encountered something they did not understand, and that was maddening for intelligent creatures. They were used to understanding their world. They understood how to hunt. They understood how to climb trees. They understood how to read the signs of danger in the jungle. But these strange, dark objects meant nothing to them. Teo woke up suddenly. The sound of animals near his camp had jerked him from sleep instantly. He opened his eyes and sat up, his hand moving to the flare gun at his side. In the dim light of his dying campfire, he could see three large shapes near his belongings. His heart started racing. These were not small animals. These were big, very big, the largest predators he had seen yet on this planet. They had teeth. They had claws. He was alone, and they were investigating his camp. Teo slowly reached for the flare gun, trying not to make any sudden movements. The creatures had not attacked him yet, which meant they might not see him as immediate prey. But that could change very quickly. He prepared himself to fire the flare gun and run. Kira was the first one to notice that the strange creature was awake. Her yellow eyes turned and locked onto Teo's face. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Kira made a sound, a soft chirping noise that was almost curious instead of hostile. It was the kind of sound a young animal made when it wanted to investigate something but was not sure if it was dangerous. Teo did not move. He was frozen, watching the three massive predators in his camp. They were clearly young, or at least younger than they could be. Their movements had that uncertain quality that only young animals had. But they were still big enough to hurt him seriously. Slowly, very slowly, Teo raised his hands in front of his body, showing that he had no weapons. He had been on 7 planets and had dealt with 7 different predatory species. He knew what worked and what did not. Sudden movements never worked. Weapons never worked if you were outnumbered. But showing that you were not a threat sometimes worked. Sometimes intelligence could see intelligence and decide to cooperate. Day made a low rumbling sound in his chest. This was the sound a predator made when it was uncertain about another creature's intentions. Juan moved a little closer to Teo, still curious, still wondering about this strange two-legged thing. Kira tilted her head. She studied Teo carefully, the way a scientist might study something new and interesting. She was not hungry. She had eaten recently. There was no need to kill. She was simply curious, and this creature was completely new to her experience. Teo did not put down the flare gun, but he did not fire it either. He began to speak, his voice low and calm. "It is okay," he said. "I am not going to hurt you. You are just curious, yes? I understand. I am curious too." The cubs did not understand his words, but they understood his tone. It was not aggressive. It was not frightened. It was calm and controlled. Kira chirped again, and this time it sounded almost friendly. "I see you want to know about these," Teo said, pointing to his boots. He had just realized what the cubs had been trying to do. They had been trying to put their feet inside the boots. The idea was so strange and so funny that he almost laughed. These intelligent creatures had no idea what shoes were for. Slowly, Teo moved his hand toward one of the boots. The cubs watched him carefully, but did not attack. He picked up a boot and held it in his hands, showing it to them. Then he did something that would change everything. He took off one of his own socks and began the process of putting his boot back on, making the action slow and deliberate. He unlaced the boot completely and opened it wide so the cubs could see inside. Then he placed his foot at the proper opening and guided it slowly into the boot. The cubs watched with complete attention. They had done something wrong. This creature was showing them the right way. Teo laced up the boot carefully, making sure the cubs saw each step. Then he took off the boot again and did it a second time, repeating the actions. He put on the boot and took it off 3 more times, each time making sure the cubs were watching. He made small, encouraging sounds, the way a teacher might make sounds to encourage a student. Juan stepped forward. He wanted to try. Teo held out the boot toward him, showing the opening at the top. Juan looked at the boot, then at Teo, then back at the boot. Slowly, he raised one of his large paws. Teo guided it gently toward the opening. The boot was too small for Juan's foot, but Teo was showing him the concept. This was where the foot went. This was the right way. Day and Kira moved closer, too. They wanted to understand. They wanted to know what this strange creature knew. Teo continued his demonstration, patient and slow. He was a teacher now, and his students were 3 young alien predators. For the rest of the night, Teo sat with the cubs and showed them everything he could about the boots. He walked in them and walked without them, pointing out the thorns and sharp plants that had hurt his feet. He showed them how the boots protected his skin. He made connections between pain and protection, between danger and the solution to danger. The cubs learned. They were intelligent creatures, and they could see the pattern. They could understand cause and effect. When Teo walked on thorns without boots, he limped. When he wore boots, he moved normally. The connection was clear. By the time dawn broke over the jungle, Teo had made a decision. He was not going to try to leave the cubs behind. They were intelligent. They were learning. And somehow their presence made him feel less alone in this dangerous place. He would keep going to the relay station, and he would bring them with him. The cubs, for their part, had decided something too. This strange creature was interesting. It was a teacher. It showed them things they did not understand. That was worth following, worth protecting, worth being close to. The 3 young predators and the human explorer had formed an unlikely bond, and together they would face the jungle ahead. The morning sun filtered through the purple leaves of the jungle canopy, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground. Teo sat by his campfire, watching the 3 cubs move around the camp. They were more relaxed now, more comfortable with his presence. Day was sniffing the ration packs, trying to figure out what they contained. Juan was examining the campfire itself, careful to keep his paws away from the heat. Kira was watching Teo, waiting to see what he would do next. Teo pulled out his emergency repair kit. He had spare materials inside, including several rolls of strong medical tape and some cloth wrappings meant for injuries. He looked at the 3 cubs and made a decision. If he was going to teach them about protection for their feet, He would need to make boots that actually fit them. The boots from his own feet were too small, but he could fashion something that might work. He started with Kira first, because she seemed the most willing to cooperate. He wrapped her feet carefully with the medical tape and cloth, creating a thick, protective layer around each paw. It was not perfect, but it was something. Kira stood still during the process, apparently trusting that Tao knew what he was doing. When he finished, she flexed her paws, testing the feeling of the wrappings. "This will protect you," Tao said in his calm, teaching voice. "Like my boots protect me, understand?" Kira made a soft, chirping sound. She took a few experimental steps. The wrappings felt strange, but they did not hurt. She felt stronger somehow, protected. She walked over to where Tao was sitting and pressed her wrapped paw against his leg. It was a gesture that meant acceptance, maybe even affection. Day was next. He was more resistant at first, pulling his feet away when Tao tried to wrap them. But Tao was patient. He showed Day how Kira's feet were now protected. He showed him how it did not hurt. Slowly, Day stopped fighting and allowed the wrappings to be applied. When it was done, he stood up and walked around the camp, getting used to the new sensation. Juan was the easiest of the three. He seemed to understand what was happening and what the purpose was. He held his feet out willingly and let Tao wrap them without any resistance. When Tao finished, Juan was the first one to walk toward the edge of the camp and into the jungle beyond. He stepped on the sharp plants and thorny ground that had probably hurt his feet before. This time there was no pain. This time, the wrappings protected him. Juan returned to the camp and made a pleased, chirping sound. He had understood the lesson perfectly. This was protection. This was safety. This was good. Tao smiled. These creatures were learning faster than he had expected. They were not just intelligent. They were capable of grasping complex ideas about cause and effect, about the relationship between preparation and survival. They were in many ways not so different from humans. For the next several days, Tao and the cubs traveled together toward the relay station. Each day, Tao reinforced the lessons about foot protection. He showed them how to walk in the wrappings without tripping. He demonstrated how the protection allowed them to move more confidently through dangerous terrain. He made games out of the lessons, running races and climbing obstacles, always with the feet wrapped. The cubs became obsessed with their foot wrappings. When the wrappings wore out or got dirty, they would come to Tao and raise their feet, waiting for him to replace them. It became a ritual, a moment of connection between teacher and students. Tao would carefully remove the old wrappings and apply new ones while talking to the cubs about other things he thought they should know. He told them about his home planet. He tried to describe water in a way they could understand, since their planet seemed to have a different relationship with liquid. He showed them pictures on his personal device of human cities and human technology. The cubs watched the screen with fascination, their ears perked forward, their eyes focused completely on the images. During the quiet moments, Tao would check in with Mi-san through his communication device. The signal was weak and unreliable, but he managed to get messages through about once a day. "This is incredible," Mi-san said during one of these check-ins. "The intelligence you are describing, the learning capability, the social bonding, this is not what we expected from the Velkari species. Our previous surveys indicated they were dangerous but not this cognitively advanced." "They are remarkable," Tao agreed. "Kira is particularly smart. She seems to understand cause and effect better than the others. And Day, he is more cautious, more thoughtful. Juan is playful, but he learns quickly. They are like cubs in many ways, young and still developing their understanding of the world. But the intelligence is definitely there." "Be careful," Mi-san warned. "They are still predators. They still have instincts that could be dangerous." "I know," Tao said. "But I think there is a way to work with those instincts rather than against them." They are not attacking because they do not see me as prey. They see me as something else. A teacher, maybe. A guide. As long as I maintain that relationship, I think we will be fine. On the 8th day of travel, they reached a river. It was wide and fast-moving, and there was no bridge. Teo knew they would have to cross it somehow. He studied the water, looking for a shallow place where they could wade across. The cubs were nervous about the water. They knew how to swim, but fast-moving rivers were dangerous. Predators could be hiding in the water. The water itself could be dangerous. They did not want to cross. Teo sat down and thought about what to do. He could not force the cubs to cross. He could not leave them behind. Then he had an idea. He waded into the water first, showing them that it was not dangerous. He showed them how to find the shallow places where the current was weaker. He demonstrated how to move through the water without falling or getting swept away. Slowly, one by one, the cubs followed him. Day went first, moving carefully through the water with his feet wrapped and protected. The wrappings did not come off, and his feet did not hurt. Juan followed next, and then Kira. They all made it across safely. When they reached the other side, the cubs made sounds of excitement and accomplishment. They had done something difficult. They had faced something that scared them. And they had succeeded because they had trusted the human who had taught them how. Teo sat on the riverbank and looked at his 3 students. They were covered in mud from the river crossing. Their wrappings were wet and hanging loose, but they were safe. They were together, and they were learning that with the right teacher and the right tools, almost anything could be faced and overcome. "Good," Teo said, reaching out and patting each of the cubs on the head. "Very good. You are all brave, and you are all learning well. Tomorrow, we will reach the relay station. Tomorrow, we will be safe." The cubs pressed close to him, their bodies warm and solid against his legs. They did not need to understand his exact words to understand his meaning. He was proud of them. He valued them. He would protect them, just as they now protected him by staying with him and learning what he had to teach. That night, as the 3 cubs slept curled around Teo's campfire, he looked up at the alien stars and thought about how quickly everything could change. A crash. A meeting with curious creatures. A few days of teaching and learning. And now he had 3 loyal companions who would follow him anywhere. He did not know what would happen when he reached the relay station. He did not know if anyone would understand what he had accomplished here. But looking at the peaceful faces of his students, he knew it was right. It was good. And whatever came next, they would face it together. The relay station appeared suddenly through the trees, a collection of metal buildings and communication towers rising above the jungle canopy. Teo felt relief wash over him. They had made it. After 2 weeks of travel through dangerous territory, teaching 3 young predators about foot protection and survival, he had finally reached the station. Now he could call for help. Now things would get back to normal. He approached the station cautiously, with Kira, Day, and Juan staying close behind him. The buildings looked undamaged from the outside, which was good. But as he got closer, he noticed something wrong. The doors to the main building were locked from the outside. The communication array on top of the station was dark and silent. No lights were blinking. No signals were being sent or received. Teo checked the security panel beside the main door and tried to unlock it. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. The system was completely offline. He walked around the building looking for another way in. Every entrance was locked and sealed. This was not an accident. This was intentional. "No," Teo said aloud. "This cannot be happening." His personal communication device crackled to life. Misun's voice came through, worried and frustrated. "Teo, I am seeing activity on the other side of the planet. Multiple heat signatures moving toward your position. Someone else is on Vex 9. Before Teo could respond, he heard the sound of aircraft engines. Two military shuttles came over the jungle canopy and descended toward the relay station. They landed in the clearing, and soldiers in combat gear began to pour out of them. There were at least 20 of them, all armed, all moving with military precision. At the front of the group was Commander Jin Ho. Teo recognized him immediately. They had both applied to be on this deep space mission, but Jin Ho's application had been rejected. Jin Ho had blamed Teo for it, had spread rumors that Teo had sabotaged his chances, and now somehow Jin Ho was here on Vex 9 with a military force. "Teo!" Jin Ho called out, his face twisted into something between a smile and a sneer. "I was hoping I would find you alive." "What are you doing here?" Teo demanded. "This is a scientific expedition. Military forces should not be here." "Plans change," Jin Ho said. He gestured to his soldiers. "We have new orders. This planet is being claimed for military purposes. All previous scientific operations are being terminated." Teo looked at the armed soldiers. He looked at the locked relay station. He understood now. Jin Ho had sabotaged the relay station to prevent Teo from calling for help. Jin Ho had brought the military here to take control of the planet before the scientific community knew what was happening. This was a coup, a military takeover disguised as a change in plans. "You locked the relay station," Teo said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "Of course I did," Jin Ho said. "I could not have you calling for help and ruining my plans. I had to make sure you were isolated and alone. But I see you have made some interesting friends." Jin Ho had just noticed the three cubs. His eyes widened, and his hand moved to the weapon at his side. "Those are Velkari!" he shouted. "Active hostile species. They need to be eliminated immediately." "No!" Teo threw himself between the soldiers and the cubs. "They are not hostile. They are peaceful. They are intelligent. You cannot hurt them." "Stand aside," Jin Ho said coldly. "Those are dangerous predators. They are a threat to our occupation of this planet. They will be destroyed." The soldiers began to raise their weapons. Teo saw what was about to happen. He was about to witness the beginning of an interspecies war. Started not out of necessity, but out of fear and ignorance. He could not let that happen. "No!" Teo screamed. He turned to the cubs and made urgent gestures. "Do something! Show them you are intelligent! Show them you are not just animals!" Kira seemed to understand. She looked at Teo, then at the armed soldiers, and she made a decision. She turned to Juan and Day and made a series of chirping sounds. The three cubs moved as one, their movements coordinated and deliberate. They positioned themselves beside Teo, not attacking the soldiers, but standing with the human in a clear show of unity and purpose. But that was not all. Teo had an idea, a desperate hope. He reached down and pulled out the medical wrappings and tape he had been carrying. He gestured to the cubs. "Your feet," he called out. "Show them your feet!" The cubs understood. They had done this before. They came forward one by one and held out their wrapped paws for Teo to reinforce. The wrappings were dirty and worn from 2 weeks of travel, but they were still there. Teo carefully removed the old wrappings and applied new ones, his hands shaking slightly as he worked. The soldiers watched in confusion as a human expert care on the feet of 3 large predators. The cubs stood calmly and allowed this to happen. When Teo finished, he gestured for them to demonstrate. Kira walked across the clearing, her wrapped feet moving carefully and deliberately. Day followed, then Juan. All 3 cubs moved in coordinated patterns, their intelligence and obedience clear to anyone watching. One of the soldiers, a woman named Ye Jin, lowered her weapon. She was an officer, second in command to Jin Ho, and she had been watching this interaction with growing understanding. "Commander," she said slowly, "look at what is happening here. These creatures are not mindlessly attacking. They are cooperating. They are following the humans' instructions. They are intelligent. Truly intelligent. They are predators, Jin-Ho said, but his voice was less certain now. Yes, Ye-Jin said, but predators can be intelligent. Humans are predators too. Intelligence does not automatically mean danger. The orders are clear, Jin-Ho said, though he seemed less sure of himself now. All hostile species must be eliminated. Ye-Jin stepped forward, looking directly at Teo. Tell me what happened, she said. How did you come to be traveling with 3 Velkari cubs? Teo told her the story. He described the crash, the initial encounter, the decision to teach the cubs about foot protection. He explained what he had learned about their intelligence and their capacity to learn and adapt. He talked about the bond that had formed between them, the trust that had developed. Ye-Jin listened carefully to every word. When Tayo finished, she turned back to Jin-Ho. Commander, we cannot execute these creatures. They are intelligent beings. They have formed a peaceful bond with this human. To kill them now would be a crime against an intelligent species. Jin-Ho's face darkened with anger. You are out of line, Officer Ye-Jin. These are my orders. Then I respectfully refuse those orders, Ye-Jin said. She lowered her weapon completely and stepped away from the other soldiers. I will not participate in the execution of intelligent beings. If you execute them, you will have to go through me first. Several other soldiers lowered their weapons as well. They had seen what Teo and Ye-Jin had seen. They had watched an intelligent creature teach 3 other intelligent creatures something important. They had witnessed cooperation, patience, and learning. These were not the actions of a monster with dangerous predators. These were the actions of a teacher and students. Jin-Ho looked at his troops, at Ye-Jin, at Tayo, and finally at the 3 cubs. His hand slowly moved away from his weapon. His face was still angry, but he was forced to accept the situation. You have made a mistake, Jin-Ho said to Teo. Those creatures will turn on you eventually. You cannot trust a predator. But if you want to keep them alive, that is your choice. My new orders are to monitor the situation and report any hostile activity. He turned and walked back to the shuttles. Some of his soldiers followed him, but others remained, watching Teo and the cubs with new understanding and respect. Teo felt the tension in his shoulders finally start to ease. The immediate danger had passed. The cubs were safe. Ye-Jin stepped forward and extended her hand to him. You did something remarkable here, she said. You showed us something we needed to see. We came to this planet thinking we would encounter only animals, but you have shown us that we will encounter a new intelligence, a new species that deserves respect and protection. Teo shook her hand, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over him. Thank you, he said simply. Thank you for understanding. As the sun set over the relay station, Ye-Jin worked to restore the communication systems. By nightfall, the first messages were being sent back to Earth. Messages about the crash, about the survival, and about the remarkable discovery of an intelligent alien species. Messages that would change the course of human history on this planet. But in the camp outside the station, Teo sat with his 3 students and told them that they were brave, that they were intelligent, and that the world was beginning to understand how special they truly were.